Good morning, everybody. Glad to see everybody can be with us this morning. My lesson is Mothers of the Bible. Now, next Sunday, the Mother's Day, and we can't hear enough about our mothers. So, if so it is getting closer to Mother's Day. The world has set aside these days to honor mothers and mother figures. I believe they should be honored every day. I have a poem to share that I have shared with you before, but it reminds us about a mother's love. This poem is by Hannah Rice. I can't say her name right. About a mother's love. A mother's love is something that no one can explain. It makes a deep devotion and of sacrifice and pain. It's endless and unselfish and enduring, come what may, for nothing can destroy it or take that love away. It is patient and forgiving when all others are forsaken. And it never fails or falters, even though the heart is breaking. It believes beyond belief when the world around condemns, and it glows with all the beauty of the rarest, brightest gem. It is far beyond defining or defiles all expectations. And it still remains a secret, like the mystery of the creation. And many spiritual miracles man cannot understand, and another wondrous invention of God's tender guiding hand. The Bible tells us many places that mothers is to be honored. And in fact, it was the fifth commandment in the Ten Commandments that we can find. Turn with me to Exodus 20:12. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God hath given thee. Now we go over to Ephesians 6:1-3. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and thy mother, which is the first commandment, with this promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. So you can see our mothers are to be respected and honored, and not just Mother's Day, but every day. After a prayer and a song, we'll get farther into this lesson. Well, the first mother we're going to talk about in the Bible is Sarah, Abraham's wife. The impatient mother. God had promised Abraham that his descendant would be more numerous than the stars, and no doubt Sarah was aware of this, but much time had went by when she had not conceived. And she let's turn over to Genesis 16:1-4. Genesis 16, 1 through 4. Now Sarah, Abraham's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarah said unto Abraham, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go into my maid, and make be that I may obtain children by her. And Abraham hearkened to the voice of Sarah. And Sarah, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and after Abraham had dwelled 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abraham to be his wife. And he went into Hagar, and she conceived, and when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. If you study about Sarah, like so many of us do, try to take our matters in our own hands and try to do it our way, not God's way. So you see where she gave her maid servant to Abraham, so she would bear him a son. But you see, that was not God's plan. Sarah had took the matter into her own hand and out of God's hand. When we do that a lot and try to take it out of God's hand and try to do it our way, and usually it comes out, the results is not what it should have been. This is what happened to Sarah when Hagar bore a child for Abraham. And the maid probably was gagging, pointing at her, all that thing. I gave him a child. You can't give him a child. So Sarah probably dealt harshly with her maid. Sarah probably wished she had never done that. Took the matters in her own hands and tried to give her husband a child. We must trust in God, in His ways. It might not be as fast as we want, but He has a plan and a plan for us. We have all felt like Sarah, and we've always taken the matter into our own hands instead of waiting patiently for it to be. As you study Sarah, you know that she was way in age to conceive, but through God's hands, anything is possible. Let's go to Genesis 17 through 21. Genesis 17 through 21. When Abraham fell upon his face and laughed and said into his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? And Abraham said unto God, O thy Ishmael may live before thee. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and this his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 prince shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. You can even see Abraham was amazed at what the Lord was telling him. This just goes to show you that God, all things are possible. So a great lesson we can learn from Sarah is not take matters in our own hands, but to be patient and put our trust in God's timing. If you haven't become a mother yet, it doesn't mean that you won't or won't be a mother figure to other people, someone and someday. The next mother I would like to talk about is Hannah. This story is found in 1 Samuel 1 through 7. Now there was a certain man of I hope you read along because these are big words I will not be able to pronounce, of the mount, and Hephraisim, and his name was Elika, the son of Jeroham, and the son of Elihu, the son of Tom, and the son of Juba, and Eliab. And he had 2 wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priest of the Lord, were there. And when the time was that Elika offered, he gave to Peninnah his wife, and to all her sons and her daughters portion. But unto Hannah he gave all worthy portions of his love. Hannah, but the Lord has shut up her womb. And her advisor also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord has shut up her womb. And as he did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she provoked her. Therefore she wept and did not eat. We learn from here that a man by the name of Elkanah and 2 wives, Peninnah and Hannah. Peninnah was able to give children, but Hannah was not. When they would go once a year to worship God and bring their sacrifices, Eli would make all offerings and give portion to Peninnah and her children, that would give double the portion for Hannah, because he loved her so much, even though she had not borne him children. This was very troublesome to Hannah, and all she wanted to do was to be a mother. And it certainly didn't help matters when Peninnah would give her a hard time about not having children yet. Let's go on to verse 8 to 11. And then Elkanah, her husband, to her Hannah, why weepest thou, and why eatest thou not, and why is thy heart grieving? Am not I better to thee than 10 sons? So Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh, and after they had drunk. Now Eli the priest sat upon the seat by the post of the temple of the Lord. And she was in bitterness of soul, and prayed unto the Lord, and wept sore. And she vowed a vow, and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look up on the affection of thy handmaid, and remember me, and not forget thy handmaid, that will give unto me thy handmaid a man child, then I will give unto you the Lord, I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. You could see Hannah was getting very depressed. She prayed to God from her heart and with the eyes full of tears. She poured out her soul to the Lord and asked to allow her to have a son. And she see where she had promised that he would be the Lord's all the days of his life. She put her trust into the Lord. The Lord heard her prayers. In Samuel, if you look, we looked it up, Samuel means ask him of the Lord. That's what Samuel says, ask him of the Lord. Now she said, she stayed at home with Samuel until he was weaned. Then she took him to the priest to let him forever serve the Lord. Let's go on with Samuel from 24 to the 28th verse. Samuel 1, 24 through 28. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with the 3 bullocks and 1 heifer of flour and a bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh. And the child was young. And they slew the bullock and brought the child to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, as thy soul liveth, my Lord, I am the woman that stood by thee here praying unto the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord had given me my penance which I asked of him. Therefore also I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there. Not only did Hannah do right thing by trusting God in his timing, she also kept her promise and made the Lord about giving her son over to him. Since Hannah was so faithful and a wonderful mother, we learn that God blessed her with even more children if you go and study. Let's go over to 1 Samuel 2, 20 through 21. And Eli blessed Elkanah and his wife, and said, The Lord giveth thee seed of this woman for the loins which is lent to the Lord. And they went unto their own home. And the Lord visited Hannah, so that she conceive, and bare 3 sons and 2 daughters. And the child Samuel grew before the Lord. So you see that she went on and had more children after she had been promised, and God promised her Samuel. The next mother we'll talk about is Jochebed, Moses' mother. She is a very good example of a mother willing to do anything to save her child. Let's go to Exodus 2, 1 through 10. And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took to wife a daughter of a Levite. And the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him that he was a good godly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could not longer hide him, she took forth him a ark of bulrush, and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid him in the flags by the river brink. And his sister stood afar off to wit with what would be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maids to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. And she had compassion on him, and said, This is one of the Hebrew children. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, Shall I go and call thee a nurse of the Hebrew woman, that she may nurse the child for thee? And Pharaoh's daughter said, Go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, Take this child away, and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses. And she said, Because I drew him out of the water. You can see where Moses' mother loved him very dearly. And she was not about to have him thrown into the river by the Pharaoh's command. Now, as you read the story, what happened, it's easy to see that Jacob was taking a big risk, putting her son in the river, allowing the Pharaoh's daughter to see him. She could have easily ordered her servants to drown the baby Moses, but the Pharaoh's daughter saw the baby crying. And as most women, you know, when a baby cries, their heart, they want to take care of it, try to ease it and make it quit crying. But as you read, she got to nurse Moses as he's growing, and as he was growing nursing and stuff, she had the time to teach Moses about God and the Israelites before she, while she was feed him before she weaned him. And he never forgot it, as you can read. And the influence that his mother had on him led him to define one of his own fellow Hebrew people. Remember, as you read, how he struck the Egyptian dead for beating on a Hebrew slave. Of course, we all know what happened to Moses. You know, all mothers and fathers alike can learn great lessons from Jochebed. Trying to say it right. You know, what we teach now will stick with our children. They might kind of forget it, but it will come back to them. And the way we live and our influence. We must understand that a Christian parent and grandparent, that our children and our grandchildren look at us as examples. So you see, there is a great need for us to live righteous lives. If we're going to teach someone to do something, we must be the example. This principle does not apply just to parents or grandparents. It applies to all the Christians that's striving. We're all examples. Everybody, don't think anybody's looking, but they're always looking for you to follow. But we keep our faith up and our strength up. You know, where you work at, if your friends or your co-worker, faithful Christian, they catch you doing something that a Christian wouldn't do, then you kind of lose them. And they kind of say, well, and I've seen this in places I've worked at. Saunders worked at that one place I worked at. And their attitude was, well, he says he's a Christian. If he's doing that, then I don't have to become a Christian because I'm going to heaven too because he's doing it. But I said, no, that's not the way Christians should act. And of course, I get a boy kicked to the side, I won't talk to you. I won't be. That goes on for months. So, but eventually, if you don't hound them or nothing, just be yourself, be a Christian, they'll come back and talk to you again. But that's one place I worked at. It was not pleasant. The next mother I want to talk about is Naomi. Naomi shows a great love to her daughter-in-laws. Naomi was married and had 2 sons who were married to 2 women from Moab. Naomi was no doubt a very loving mother. But the unthinkable happens. We all know that unthinkable things happen. Her husband died, and after 10 years after that, both her sons died. Parents never want to live longer than their children, but there's no time. We don't have our set time how long we live. So Naomi decides to go back to Judah, where she was from, and her daughter-in-laws wanted to go with her. Again, this would indicate what kind of loving woman this was. These ladies desired to stay with their mother-in-law. But Ruth tries to persuade them to go back to their own mothers, leave her. And one of them did listen to Ruth, but the other does not. Let's turn over to Ruth, chapter 1, verse 16 and 17. Ruth, chapter 1, verse 16 through 17. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from the following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. My people shall be my people. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. You can see how much her daughter-in-law was more of a daughter to her. You can see that she shows how much love and dedication she had for her mother-in-law. They arrived in Bethlehem, and Ruth goes into the fields to gather up heads of grain. The field she goes to belongs to Boaz, who is related to Naomi. But Ruth catches the eye of Boaz, and he wants her to continue gathering food from his fields and to hang around his maids, servants, and she does this. When Naomi hears about this, she gets excited for her daughter-in-law, and she gives her good advice on how to please Boaz and to gain favor in his sight. As we read and study, sure enough, Naomi's advice paid off, and Boaz and Ruth become married and have a child named Obed, who would become King David's grandfather. Naomi once again had the opportunity to hold a child in her hands, and no doubt, as a grandmother, she helped take care and love this grandchild very much. Even though Ruth did not give birth to Naomi, she was the daughter to her. We can safely say that Naomi would have learned a great deal from being a good mother from Ruth. This is another wonderful aspect of what a mother can do. We have looked at several mothers this morning and their characteristics. They have learned how important mothers are and how they can be honored. They have also learned that we must be patient and trust the Lord's timing, and that there is a great need for us to teach our children and our grandchildren about God and to be good examples for them, that those in the world, in order to grow as Christians. This is in my lesson, but I don't like to end it without giving the opportunity to give the invitation that we must hear the word. We can find in Romans 10:14. We must have faith, we can find in Romans 10:17. We must repent, we can find in Acts 2:38. We must confess, we can find in Romans 10:9. We want to be baptized, Mark 16:16. These are several, but there are more in the Bible. There are several more that tells us how to become a Christian. Christ, a child of God. If you're already a child of God but need prayers for anything, come forward as we sing the song that has been selected. Well, I hope I brought something forward for us to maybe had said in our minds, but have kind of put it back and kind of forgot about it. But if there's anything I said that's not with the Bible, that's wrong, bring it to me, because I don't want to be wrong.